スーパーの缶詰売り場、色とりどりのサバ缶やイワシ缶が並ぶ前で、一人の男が立ち尽くしている。彼は手に取ったイワシ缶のラベルをじっと見つめ、眉を潜める。カメラは彼の視線を追ってラベルにズームインする。そこにはただ、イワシとだけ書かれている。Pick up a can of sardines and read the label. It says sardines. Simple, honest, one of the healthiest foods you can eat. But here is something the canned fish industry would rather you did not know. There is no single fish called a sardine. The word sardine is a catch-all term, and under the law it can legally describe around 20 different species of small fish, which means the can in your hand may not contain what you think it contains, and in some cases may not contain a true sardine at all. Sardines should be simple, and at their best, they are one of the great foods in the grocery store. Low in mercury, rich in omega-3 fats, calcium, and vitamin D for a couple of dollars a can. But the industry has found a dozen ways to cheapen fake and contaminate that simple can. Some brands pack cheaper herring or spread and still call it sardines. Some source from polluted or overfished waters and tell you nothing. Some drown the fish in cheap soybean oil that masks low quality. Some still use can linings made with the chemical BPA. And one of the most famous names in canned fish saw its chief executive convicted in a criminal price-fixing conspiracy and sentenced to prison for cheating the very customers who trusted it. Today we are opening 15 of the worst canned sardine brands and industry practices that deserve a closer look, sharing 5 rules for spotting real sardines, and 5 brands that are genuinely verifiably 100% sardines. Let us get started. Quick word before we begin. For the first time, the Hidden Menu and the Hidden Pantry have collaborated on something just for our viewers, the Hidden Guide. Over 200 pages of brand verdicts, restaurant ratings, and the better alternatives we recommend. Everything we've learned across both channels in one place. You'll find it at thehiddenguide.com. Now, let's get into today's video. Number 15. Great Value Sardines, Walmart. Walmart's Great Value Sardines are among the cheapest canned fish on any American shelf. Walmart reported revenues exceeding $648 billion in fiscal 2024. And with canned fish, the rock bottom price is the first warning sign because quality sardines, responsibly caught and carefully packed, cost money. Great value sardines are typically packed in soybean oil or water and sourced through the global commodity fish trade, with the can offering little detail about which species was used, which ocean it came from, or how it was tested. The budget canned fish category is built on sourcing the cheapest available catch, which often means fish from waters and fisheries that more careful brands avoid. Independent studies of cheap canned sardines have found concerning levels of contaminants. A study of canned sardines soybean oil found that cadmium, nickel, and lead exceeded safe limits in some samples. And the cheapest products with the least sourcing transparency are exactly where those risks concentrate. For a $648 billion company with the resources to demand species verification, origin documentation, and contaminant testing from its suppliers, the choice to sell the cheapest possible can with the least possible information leaves the consumer with no way to know what is actually inside beyond the word sardines on the label. The scale of Walmart's purchasing makes this especially striking. A company that buys canned fish in such enormous volume has more leverage than almost any buyer on earth to insist that its suppliers document the species, name the fishery, and provide testing results. That leverage simply is not used in the service of transparency because the entire premise of the budget can is the lowest possible price, and transparency costs money at every step. The result is a product that is cheap precisely because the company declined to spend on the things a careful consumer would most want to know about. The price tag is low, but the information is missing. And in canned fish, the missing information is exactly where the risk hides. Number 14. Kroger brand sardines. Kroger is the largest supermarket chain in the United States, and its store brand sardines compete directly on price with Walmart's Great Value. Like all store brand canned fish, Kroger's product is sourced and packed by contract suppliers, whose identity does not appear on the can. The store brand model creates the transparency problem we have seen across every food category. The consumer cannot verify the species, the country of origin, or the testing protocols from one can to the next because the contract packer can change, and the fish can come from entirely different fisheries without any change to the label. A can bought in spring may contain a different species caught in a different ocean than a can bought in fall, even though both wear the same Kroger label and carry the same price. Canned sardines are a global commodity sourced from fisheries around the world and pulled through international trade. When you buy the cheapest store brand can, you are buying into that commodity stream at its lowest grade with no traceability to a specific fishery, no species guarantee, and no published testing. In a product category where species fraud and sourcing concerns are well documented, the absence of traceability is exactly the condition in which those problems. Number 13. Beach Cliff Sardines. Beach Cliff is a familiar, inexpensive sardine brand that has been on American shelves for decades, often among the cheapest name brand options in the canned fish aisle. What most consumers do not realize is who owns it. Beach Cliff is a most consumers who reach for a can of Beach Cliff have no idea they are buying a product from the same company whose price-fixing conspiracy we will get to at number 1. The brand is typically packed in soybean oil, mustard, or water at a budget price point, and like most budget canned fish, it offers little transparency about species, sourcing, or testing. Independent taste tests and reviews have repeatedly placed Beach Cliff among the lower quality options with a softer, mushier texture than premium brands. The deeper issue with Beach Cliff is the hidden corporate parentage. The familiar, homey, seaside-sounding name conceals the fact that this is a mass-market product from one of the largest and most legally troubled fish corporations in America. The name on the can is designed to feel small and traditional. The company behind it is anything but. Number 12. Brunswick Sardines. Brunswick is one of the most recognizable sardine brands in North America, widely distributed and inexpensive. And it is the clearest example of one of the central deceptions in the entire canned fish aisle. The fish in the can is frequently not a true sardine at all. Brunswick products are commonly made from Atlantic herring, not true sardines. This is legal because the word sardine is a catch-all term, and herring is one of the species that can be canned and sold under sardine-style labeling. But it is a meaningful substitution. The consumer believes they are buying sardines and may be receiving a different, often cheaper, fish. Brunswick is also owned by the same corporate family as Bumblebee, adding it to the list of familiar names that trace back to the same troubled parent. This species question is not a technicality. Consumer Lab, the independent testing organization, has specifically flagged the strange situation of a product labeled sardines listing herring as its main ingredient, raising exactly the question a consumer should ask. If I am buying sardines, why does the ingredient list say herring? Brunswick is the brand that makes that question impossible to ignore. The texture has also been criticized in independent reviews as mushy and inconsistent, the hallmark of a budget product built on a price rather than quality. To be clear, there is nothing inherently wrong with eating herring. It is a perfectly good fish, nutritious and widely enjoyed in its own right. The problem is one of honesty and value. When a consumer pays for sardines and receives herring, they are paying a price set for one fish while receiving another, often cheaper, one. The substitution is invisible to anyone who does not read the fine print, and it is enabled entirely by the loophole in the word sardine. A brand that wanted to be fully transparent would put the species front and center. A brand that benefits from the confusion leaves the word sardine large on the front and the word herring small on the back. Brunswick also illustrates how consolidated the budget canned fish world has become. Between Brunswick, Beach Cliff, and the flagship Bumblebee label, a single corporate family controls several of the most familiar inexpensive names in the aisle. A shopper who reaches for Brunswick instead of Bumblebee, believing they are choosing a different and perhaps more trustworthy company, may simply be buying another product from the same parent with the same priorities and the same corporate history. The variety on the shelf is to a significant degree an illusion. Number 11. Ocean Prince Sardines. Ocean Prince is a budget sardine brand that has earned a particular distinction in independent reviews. It is repeatedly ranked at or near the bottom of blind taste tests where other brands have defenders. Ocean Prince is documented again and again as one of the worst tasting and lowest quality canned sardines available. Reviewers have described Ocean Prince sardines as grainy, scaly, and riddled with bones, with a texture and flavor that consistently place it last or near last in head-to-head comparisons. The brand competes purely on price, and the quality reflects exactly that. Like other budget brands, it offers little transparency about the species used, the fishery it came from, or any contaminant testing. There is nothing dramatic or scandalous about Ocean Prince. It is simply a consistent, documented example of what happens when a canned fish product is built around hitting the lowest possible price. The sourcing is opaque, the processing is minimal, and the eating experience reflects the corners that were cut to get the can onto the shelf for as little money as possible. The lesson of Ocean Prince is the lesson of the whole budget category. When the only goal is cheapness, the fish inside is the first thing to suffer. The bones and scales that reviewers complain about in Ocean Prince also point to something about processing. Better sardine producers take care in how the fish are cleaned, trimmed, and packed, hand layering them in many premium tins so that the result is intact, attractive, and pleasant to eat. A budget operation packing at maximum speed for minimum cost has no incentive to take that care. And the grainy, scaly, bone-heavy result that shows up in blind tests is the direct consequence. You are not just tasting cheaper fish. You are tasting a cheaper process, one that skipped the steps that turn a small, oily fish into something worth looking forward to. For a few cents more per can, the better brands prove that those steps are entirely possible. Ocean Prince simply chose not to take them. We are a third of the way through this list. And the biggest industry-wide problems, the species fraud, the sourcing, and the contamination, are still ahead, along with the brand whose executive went to prison. If this is changing how you look at the canned fish aisle, share this video with someone who keeps sardines in the pantry. Let us continue. Number 10. The species shell game. This is the single most important thing to understand about Kensa sardines. The Snorzel sardine is not the name of a species. It is a market term, a catch-all, that under United States labeling rules can legally apply to around 20 different kinds of small fish from the herring family. True sardines, European pilchard, Pacific sardine, Japanese pilchard, and others are genuine sardines. But the same shelf holds cans labeled with sardine-style branding that actually contains sprat, often called bristling, which is a small herring or Atlantic herring or other related species. The fish are biologically cousins, all members of the family Crupidae, but they are not the same fish. They do not come from the same fisheries, and they do not command the same price. When a cheaper fish is packed and sold under the sardine name, the consumer pays a sardine price for a different product. The catch-all nature of the word is exactly what makes the deception legal and widespread. A brand does not have to lie. It simply uses a term broad enough to cover whatever small fish was cheapest to source. And the consumer, who reasonably assumes a sardine is a sardine, never knows the difference. The defense is to read the actual ingredient list, not the front of the can. A can that lists herring or sprat as the main ingredient is telling you exactly what you are getting if you bother to turn it over and read. The word sardine on the front is marketing. The species on the back is the truth. It helps to understand the actual fish involved. A true sardine, in the strictest sense, refers to species like the European pilchard and the Pacific sardine, fish of a particular size and character that have been prized for centuries. Bristling, the Norwegian word that appears on many premium-looking cans, is European sprat, a smaller member of the herring family. Atlantic herring is a larger relative that is often canned and sold in sardine style. These distinctions are not snobbery. The different species come from different oceans and fisheries, carry different flavors and textures, accumulate contaminants differently depending on where they live, and sell at genuinely different wholesale prices. A brand quietly substituting a cheaper species is keeping the price difference for itself, while charging you for the fish you thought you were buying. The history of the word explains how this came to be. Sardines were named for the Italian island of Sardinia, where the small fish were once abundant, and the term spread to describe similar small oily fish wherever they were caught and canned. Over time, that generous geographic origin hardened into a market loophole, a word so broad that almost any small fish in the herring family could legally wear it. What began as a charming bit of culinary history is now in the budget aisle, a tool for selling one fish under the name of another. And the only person who can close the loophole is the consumer who turns the can over and reads what is actually inside. Number 9. The sourcing you cannot see. Where a sardine was caught matters enormously, and most cans tell you almost nothing about it. Sardines from a clean, well-managed fishery are a world apart from sardines pulled from polluted or poorly regulated waters, yet the budget can give the consumer no way to tell which one they are holding. The Monterey Bay Aquarium's Seafood Watch program, the most respected sustainability guide in the country, rates sardine sources in detail, and the differences are stark. It recommends sardines caught in Japan or Morocco, and those carrying Marine Stewardship Council certification. It advises avoiding sardines caught in Brazil due to bycatch and ineffective management, and most sardines from the Mediterranean and from France, Spain, and Portugal, where overfishing is likely occurring in most areas. The same fish, depending entirely on where and how it was caught, can be a best choice or a red-rated avoid. Contaminant studies reinforce why sourcing matters. A 2022 study of canned sardines sold in Brazil found that all samples carried an unfavorable health hazard index, driven primarily by arsenic, with the carcinogenic risk from arsenic exceeding the proposed safe limit. Arsenic and other heavy metals enter fish from the environment they live in, which means the cleanliness of the source water is directly reflected in the can. A brand that proudly names its fishery, its species, and its country of origin is giving you the information you need. A brand that hides all of it behind a single word sardines is asking you to trust a supply chain you cannot see. There is also a fraud dimension to sourcing that goes beyond contamination. Researchers studying European sardine fisheries have documented illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, including the mislabeling of where a fish was actually caught, so that it can be landed at a more favorable port or sold to dodge catch limits. Scientists have had to develop chemical fingerprinting techniques, analyzing the fatty acids in the fish itself just to verify claims about geographic origin, because the paperwork alone cannot be trusted. When the origin of a fish can be falsified on the documents, the country listed on a can, if one is listed at all, is only as reliable as the honesty of everyone in the chain. This is yet another reason that independent certification and brands with genuine verifiable traceability are worth seeking out. They represent a chain of custody that has been checked rather than a claim that has simply been printed. Number 8. The arsenic problem. Here is a fact that surprises most people. Sardines are genuinely one of the lowest mercury fish you can eat. Because they are small and short-lived and feed near the bottom of the food chain on plankton, they do not accumulate mercury the way large predatory fish like tuna and swordfish do. The FDA puts the average mercury concentration in sardine at around 1/100 of a part per million, roughly 13 times lower than canned light tuna and 35 times lower than albacore. On mercury, sardines are a clear winner, but mercury is not the only heavy metal in seafood, and on the others the picture is less reassuring. The bigger concern in canned fish testing is arsenic, a toxic heavy metal and a non-carcinogen. In June 2025, the independent testing organization Consumer Lab tested 22 canned tuna, salmon, sardine, and mackerel products and found high levels of mercury or arsenic in several of them. While arsenic was worst in canned albacore tuna, a popular brand of sardines was also found to contain a high level of arsenic, enough that the brand carries a California Proposition 65 warning label. The lesson is not that sardines are dangerous. On the contrary, well-sourced sardines remain one of the healthiest foods available, and their low mercury content is a genuine advantage. The lesson is that not all sardines are equal, that arsenic and other contaminants vary significantly by brand and by source, and that the only way to know whether a particular brand has been tested and found clean is to choose a brand that actually publishes its testing. The fish that is naturally low in mercury can still carry arsenic if it came from the wrong place, and the can will not tell you unless the company chooses to. It is worth understanding the difference between the two main forms of arsenic because the distinction matters, and the budget label tells you nothing about it. Arsenic exists as organic arsenic, which is largely harmless and common in seafood, and inorganic arsenic, which is the toxic carcinogenic form. Standard tests often measure total arsenic without separating the two, which is part of why a high arsenic reading is a concern worth taking seriously, even when the picture is incomplete. A responsible brand that tests its fish and can speak to the source of its arsenic is in an entirely different position from a budget canner that has never tested at all and could not tell you whether the arsenic in its product is the harmless kind or the dangerous kind. Cadmium is another heavy metal that turns up in canned sardine studies, and it behaves differently from mercury. Studies of canned sardines from various markets, including the soybean oil-packed products, examined in one analysis, have found cadmium, nickel, and lead exceeding safe limits in some samples. These metals accumulate in fish from contaminated water and sediment, which once again points back to sourcing as the decisive factor. A sardine from clean, well-regulated waters carries a very different contaminant profile from one pulled from a polluted or poorly managed fishery, and the price-driven budget brands are precisely the ones most likely to source from wherever the fish is cheapest rather than wherever it is cleanest. Number 7. The soybean oil drowning industry-wide. Turn over a can of budget sardines and look at what they are packed in. Very often it is soybean oil. This single ingredient choice tells you a great deal about the priorities of the brand, and none of it is good. Soybean oil is the cheapest common packing medium, far less expensive than olive oil, and it serves two purposes for a budget canner, both of which benefit the company rather than the consumer. First, it is cheap, which protects the margin on a low-priced can. Second, and more insidiously, a heavy neutral oil masks the quality of the fish. A premium sardine packed in good olive oil or simply in water has nowhere to hide. You taste the fish itself. A lower quality fish drowned in soybean oil is camouflage, its flavor and texture obscured by the oil it sits in. The oil is doing the work that quality fish should be doing. There is also a nutritional dimension. Soybean oil is a highly processed seed oil high in omega-6 fatty acids, and pecking an omega-3 rich fish in an oil heavy in omega-6 works against the very nutritional balance that makes sardines worth eating. The healthiest sardines are packed in extra virgin olive oil, which adds beneficial fats, or in water, which adds nothing and lets you control what you eat. When you see soybean oil on a sardine can, you are looking at a brand that chose the cheapest oil that also happens to hide the most about the fish inside. The packing medium is a window into the whole product. The choice of oil also affects how much of the good in sardines you actually keep. The omega-3 fats in sardines are partly fat-soluble, and some of them migrate into the packing oil over time. With water-packed sardines, draining the can loses little of value. With olive oil-packed sardines, the oil itself is worth consuming because it has absorbed some of those beneficial fats and carries the flavor of the fish. But with soybean oil-packed sardines, you are left with a poor choice. Consume a heavily processed omega-6 rich oil that has soaked up some of the fish's omega-3s, or drain it and pour part of the nutritional value down the sink. Either way, the cheap oil has compromised the product. It is a small detail that captures the entire philosophy of a budget canner, which is to spend as little as possible on every component and let the consumer absorb the cost in quality. Number 6. The BPA can lining. The fish is only part of what you are eating. The can it comes in matters too, and for decades most canned food, including sardine, has been packaged in cans lined with a coating made using bisphenol A, the industrial chemical known as BPA. BPA is used in can linings to prevent corrosion and to protect the food, but it can leach from the lining into the food itself, especially with oily, acidic, or long-stored contents. Canned sardines packed in oil are exactly the kind of product where leaching is a concern. BPA is an endocrine disruptor, meaning it can interfere with the body's hormone systems, and it has been the subject of extensive health scrutiny and regulatory action. The problem for consumers is that there is no national standard defining the term BPA-free, so companies can use the claim loosely, and many cans give no information about their lining at all. Some premium sardine brands, including Wild Planet and Safe Catch Clear Throat and various European producers, have moved to BPA-free packaging. And the Environmental Working Group has identified a number of brands using BPA-free cans across their product lines. But the situation is murkier than it sounds because some BPA-free linings use chemically similar substitutes, such as BPS, whose safety profiles are not fully established. The most reliable approach is to choose brands that specifically state their cans are BPA-free, and ideally name the alternative lining they use. If a brand says nothing about its can lining, the safest assumption is that the standard BPA-based lining is still in use. Number 5. The histamine risk industry-wide. This is one of the lesser-known but genuinely serious concerns with canned fish, and it comes down to how the fish was handled before it ever reached the can. Sardines, like other fish in their family, are naturally high in an amino acid called histidine. And when the fish is not kept cold enough after being caught, bacteria convert that histidine into histamine. Histamine in fish causes a form of food poisoning called scombroid poisoning or histamine fish poisoning, which can produce flushing, headache, rapid heartbeat, sweating, and digestive distress. The critical fact about histamine is that it is heat-stable, which means that once it forms in improperly chilled fish, the canning process cannot destroy it. Cooking and sterilizing the fish kills the bacteria but leaves the histamine behind. The only real protection is rigorous cold chain handling from the moment the fish is caught. And that is precisely the kind of careful, costly process that budget producers are least likely to maintain. A 2024 study of sardines in Morocco identified the specific bacteria responsible for histamine formation and confirmed that maintaining the integrity of the cold chain is the crucial factor in keeping histamine under control. For the consumer, this is one more reason that sourcing and processing standards matter. And one more reason to favor brands with rigorous handling and quality controls over the cheapest can on the shelf. You cannot see, smell, or taste dangerous histamine levels reliably, and no amount of cooking removes it. It is a hidden risk that traces directly back to how seriously the producer took quality at every step. The biology is worth understanding because it explains why this risk is specific to fish like sardines. Sardines, anchovies, mackerel, tuna, and herring are all naturally rich in the amino acid histidine, far more so than most other foods. When these fish sit too long at warm temperature after being caught, bacteria that are naturally present begin converting that abundant histidine into histamine. The warmer the fish, and the longer the delay before chilling, the more histamine builds up. A fish that is iced immediately on the boat and kept cold all the way to the cannery will develop little or none. A fish left in the sun on a dock or transported without adequate refrigeration can accumulate dangerous levels before it is ever canned. This is precisely why the budget end of the canned fish market carries more risk. Rigorous cold chain handling, refrigeration at every stage from catch to can, costs money and requires discipline throughout the supply chain. A producer competing solely on price has every incentive to cut exactly these invisible costs because the consumer cannot detect the difference at the point of sale. The premium brands that invest in careful handling are paying for something real, even if it never shows up as a feature on the label. With histamine, what you are really buying when you choose a quality brand is the assurance that the fish was treated with care from the moment it left the water. Number 4. The overfishing hidden in the can. Sardines are often promoted as a sustainable seafood choice, and well-managed sardine fisheries genuinely can be among the more sustainable options in the ocean. But that depends entirely on the fishery, and the can rarely tells you which one your fish came from. Behind the wholesome image, some sardine sources are seriously overfished. The Seafood Watch program rates sardines from the Mediterranean and from much of France, Spain, and Portugal as products to avoid, specifically because overfishing is likely occurring in most of those areas, along with bycatch impacts and ineffective management. Sardines from Brazil are also rated as an avoid due to bycatch and a lack of policies protecting their role in the ecosystem. Sardines occupy a critical position in the marine food web, feeding countless larger animals. So, overfishing them does damage that ripples far beyond the species itself. There is also a subtler problem that researchers call the dilution effect. When a popular fish becomes scarce due to overfishing, its decline can be hidden from consumers by quietly substituting other species or sources. So, the shelf still looks full, and the consumer never sees the shortage. Mislabeling and species substitution. The same practices that let cheaper fish be sold as sardines also serve to mask the real status of overfished stocks, making a depleted fishery appear abundant. Choosing sardines with Marine Stewardship Council certification or from well-managed fisheries like Japan and Morocco as how a consumer avoids unknowingly participating in the depletion of the very fish they are trying to enjoy responsibly. Number 3. The sodium and the missing information. Canned sardines appear genuinely healthy food, but two things on the label and one thing missing from it deserve attention. The first is sodium. Canned sardines are often quite high in salt, both from the brine or sauce they are packed in and from added salt, and a single can deliver a substantial portion of the day's recommended sodium. For seniors managing high blood pressure, heart conditions, or kidney issues, the sodium in canned sardines is a real consideration, precisely because the fish is otherwise so healthy that people eat it freely without checking. Draining the packing liquid removes some of the sodium, and choosing no salt added or low sodium varieties where available helps considerably. There's also the matter of purines. Sardines are naturally high in purines, which the body converts to uric acid, so people with gout or a history of kidney stones should be mindful of how often they eat them. None of this makes sardines unhealthy. It simply means the label is worth reading. The missing information is just as important. Most cans do not list the omega-3 content, even though those beneficial fats are one of the main reasons to eat sardines in the first place. And the amount varies significantly between brands and species. Consumer labs testing exists precisely because this beneficial information, like the contaminant information, is often absent from the label. A brand that tells you the omega-3 content, the sodium, the species, and the source is treating you as an informed consumer. A brand that prints only the word sardines and a low price is counting on you not to ask. Number 2. The price that is too good to be true. Of all the warning signs in the canned fish aisle, the most reliable is the same one that governs honey, olive oil, and every other commonly faked food. Price. Genuinely good sardines, responsibly caught from a well-managed fishery, properly cold chained to prevent histamine, packed in quality oil in a BPA-free can, and verified as the species on the label, cost real money to produce. When a can of sardines sells for well under $1, every one of those quality steps is under pressure. The fish is likely the cheapest available species from the cheapest available fishery, which raises the species fraud and contaminant risks. The packing oil is likely soybean oil, chosen to be cheap and to mask quality. The can lining is likely the standard BPA-based coating, and the handling that prevents histamine and the testing that catches arsenic are the first costs a budget producer cuts because they are invisible to the consumer at the point of sale. This does not mean the most expensive can is automatically the best, or that good sardines must be luxurious. Excellent sardines remain one of the best nutritional values in the entire grocery store, often just $2 or $3 a can. But there is a floor below which the economic simply cannot support quality. And the can price, far beneath that floor, is cheap for reasons that the label works hard not to explain. In canned fish, as in most things, you generally get what you pay for, and the very cheapest option is cheap because of choices that were made at your expense. Number 1. The price-fixing conspiracy, Bumblebee and the industry. The most important entry on this list is not about a single can. It is about what the largest players in the canned fish industry did to their own customers. And it ended with a chief executive sentenced to federal prison. Bumblebee Foods, one of the most recognizable names in American canned fish, and the parent company of brands, including Beechcliff and Brunswick, that appeared earlier on this list, pleaded guilty to participating in a criminal conspiracy to fix the prices of canned seafood. The Department of Justice investigation found that the major canned fish companies had conspired to keep prices artificially high, rather than competing fairly, cheating millions of American consumers who simply wanted an affordable, healthy source of protein. Bumblebee agreed to a criminal fine of $25 million. A rival company, Starkist, was hit with a criminal fine of $100 million for its role in the same conspiracy. The most striking part came at the top. Bumblebee's former chief executive, Christopher Liszewski, was convicted by a federal jury in 2020 for his role in orchestrating the price-fixing conspiracy and he was sentenced to 40 months in federal prison and fined $100,000. A chief executive of one of America's best-known food companies went to prison for conspiring to overcharge the public on a pantry staple. This is not a hedge, a rumor, or an allegation. It is a matter of federal court record. Think about who that conspiracy targeted. Canned hen fish is not a luxury. It is one of the most affordable sources of high-quality protein in the grocery store, a staple relied upon disproportionately by older adults on fixed incomes, by families stretching a budget, and by anyone who wants healthy food without a high price. When the major canned seafood companies conspired to keep prices artificially high, the people they overcharged were precisely those who could least afford it, and who had chosen canned fish specifically because it was supposed to be cheap and honest. The conspiracy was not an abstract corporate maneuver. It reached into the wallets of millions of ordinary people, a few cents and then a few dollars at a time. And the conspiracy was not limited to one company. The Department of Justice case implicated the largest names in the industry, with multiple companies and executives drawn into the investigation, guilty pleas, and fines totaling well over $100 million across the conspiracy. The fact that this kind of coordinated price fixing could take hold among the biggest players, the brands whose cans fill the center of the canned fish aisle, tells you how concentrated and how unaccountable the industry had become. When you understand that the companies behind some of the most familiar names in the sardine aisle were willing to break the law to overcharge you, the case for choosing transparent, independent, quality-focused brands stops being about taste and nutrition alone. It becomes a question of who has earned your trust and who has demonstrated in a court of law that they had not. 5 rules to spot real sardines. Rule 1. Read species, not the label. The word sardine is a catch-all that can cover around 20 species. Turn the can over and read the ingredient list. If it says sardines and ideally names the species or the waters, you are getting sardines. If it says herring or sprat, you are getting a different, often cheaper fish sold under sardine name. Rule 2. Demand a real origin. Good brands name the fishery, the species, and the country of origin. Look for sardines from well-managed sources like Japan, Morocco, or the Pacific, or those carrying Marine Stewardship Council certification. A can that hides where the fish came from is hiding something you should want to know. Rule 3. Choose olive oil or water, not soybean oil. The packing medium is a window into the whole product. Extra virgin olive oil adds beneficial fats. Water lets you control what you eat. Soybean oil is the cheap choice that also masks the quality of the fish inside. What the sardines are swimming in tells you what the brand prioritized. Rule 4. Look for BPA-free cans and publish testing. The best brands state clearly that their cans are BPA-free and publish or provide third-party testing for mercury, arsenic, and other heavy metals. If a brand says nothing about its can lining or its testing, assume the standard BPA lining and untested fish. Rule 5. Be suspicious of the cheapest can. Quality sardines, responsibly caught, properly handled, and honestly labeled cost real money. A can priced far below the norm has cut corners somewhere you cannot see, whether in the species, the source, the handling, or the testing. Cheap sardines are cheap for a reason. Number 1. Wild Planet. Wild Planet is one of the most transparent canned fish brands in America, sourcing sustainably caught fish, using BPA-free cans, and providing detail on its species and sourcing. Its sardines are wild-caught, packed simply, and the company has built its identity around the exact transparency that budget brands lack. They are widely available in grocery and natural food stores, and are a reliable default for a consumer who wants to stop worrying about what is in the can. Number 2. King Oscar. King Oscar is a heritage Norwegian brand over a century old, known for its hand-packed Breezling sardines in olive oil. Crucially, King Oscar is honest about its fish. It tells you it is packing Breezling, and it packs them carefully, hand-layered in the can in quality oil. The brand is consistently top-ranked in independent taste tests, and its transparency about species and process is exactly what to look for, a premium product that earns its price. Number 3. Season Brand. They have been independently tested by Consumer Lab and were noted among the better options for low contaminant levels and good omega-3 content. The brand of sardines in olive oil, water, and other simple preparations is widely available and sits at a reasonable price for a quality product that has been verified. It is a strong choice for a consumer who wants verified quality without a luxury price. Number 4. Crown Prince. Crown Prince specializes in sustainably sourced canned seafood, offers BPA-free can options, and provides skinless and boneless varieties for those who prefer them along with traditional packs. The brand is transparent about sourcing and consistently well-reviewed, and it has built its reputation on quality and responsible sourcing rather than rock-bottom price. Available in most natural food stores and many supermarkets. Number 5. A Portuguese or Spanish MSA certified team. For the best eating experience, look to the traditional canning houses of Portugal and Spain that pack genuine sardines in extra virgin olive oil and carry Marine Stewardship Council certification or clear sourcing from well-managed waters. These are the gourmet tins, often beautifully packaged, that treat sardines as the delicacy they can be. Whole, intact fish in good oil, honestly labeled as to species and origin. They cost more, but they represent canned sardines at their finest, exactly as the food was meant to be. Sardines are one of the great foods of the world. They are cheap, they are sustainable when sourced well, they are among the lowest mercury fish in the ocean, and they are packed with the omega-3 fats, calcium and vitamin D that support the heart, the bones, and the brain. For a couple of dollars, canned properly chosen sardines are arguably the best nutritional value in the entire grocery store. None of this video is a reason to stop eating them. It is a reason to choose them wisely. Because the truth is that the simple word sardine hides a great deal. It is a catch-all term that can legally cover around 20 species, which means the fish in the can may be cheaper herring or sprats, sold under a sardine name. The source may be an overfished or polluted fishery the label never reveals. The fish may carry arsenic if it came from the wrong waters or histamine if it was not kept cold, a toxin that canning cannot remove. The pecking oil may be cheap, soybean oil chosen to hide the quality of the fish. The can may be lined with BPA, and the company behind some of the most familiar names in the aisle was willing to fix prices in a criminal conspiracy that sent its chief executive to federal prison. You deserve sardines that are actually sardines. You deserve to know the species, the source, and the testing. You deserve a can packed in good oil, lined without BPA, and produced by a company that earned your trust rather than one that broke the law to exploit it. Read the species, not the label. Demand a real origin. Choose olive oil or water over soybean oil. Look for cans without BPA and for published testing, and be suspicious of the cheapest can on the shelf. The next time you reach for a tin that simply says sardines, turn it over. Read what is really inside. And remember that in this aisle, the simplest looking food hides some of the biggest questions of all. ここからが本番、私たちが普段どれほど甘い言葉で騙されているか、その冷酷な現実を暴いていく時間です。日本のスーパーやディスカウントストアの棚を思い浮かべてください。イオン、西友、ライフ、そして業務スーパー。そこには安さを競い合うように無数のイワシ缶が詰め込まれています。しかし、その安さの裏には、企業が決してあなたに知られたくないシステム化されたコスト削減の罠が隠されているのです。私たちは日本国内で広く流通している、あるいは簡単に入手できる問題ありのブランドや業界の慣行を徹底的に分析しました。これから紹介する具体的な事実を知れば、次から買い物カゴに缶詰を入れる手が確実に止まるはずです。もう自分の棚を確認したくなったなら、チャンネル登録を。この先はさらに過激になります。まず、私たちが直面している最も身近な選択肢、ディスカウント系スーパーやプライベートブランドの世界から切り込んでいきましょう。トップバッターとして取り上げるべきは、日本最大級のディスカウントチェーンや、京安の殿堂として知られる大手量販店の超格安プライベートブランド、あるいは業務スーパーで見かける輸入物の最安値ラインです。例えば、1貫100円前後、時にはそれ以下で売られている大衆向けの激安イワシ油漬け缶。こうした製品は圧倒的な価格破壊で消費者を引きつけます。運営企業の年商は数兆円規模に達し、その購買力は地球上で最も強い部類に入ります。それほどの力があれば、サプライヤーに対して魚種の厳密な証明や漁獲海域の明記、中地数の検査結果の開示を求めることなど簡単なはずです。 しかし彼らはその交渉力を消費者のための透明性には一切使いません。なぜなら格安缶詰の存在意義は限界までの低価格であり、あらゆるステップで発生す。無透明性の確保にはコストがかかるからです。このクラスの激安缶詰を開けると、まず目に飛び込んでくるのは、ドロリとした濁ったオイルと、形が崩れてボロボロになった魚の肉片です。口に入れると骨が妙に硬く触り、噛むたびにザラザラとした不快な食感が広がります。これは丁寧なトリミングや手作業での箱詰めといった工程を完全にスキップし、巨大な機械で高速処理された証拠です。さらに深刻なのは、独立系機関による安価な食用油漬け缶詰の成分分析データです。こうした製品の一部からは安全基準を上回るカドミウムやニッケル、鉛といった有害な中沈諸が検出されるケースが報告されています。コストを極限まで削るため、彼らは水質管理の甘い海域や環境規制の緩い国の漁船から国際市場で最も安く叩き売られている出所不明の魚を買い叩いているのです。缶の裏を見ても具体的な産地や魚種は書かれておらず、ただイワシとだけ印刷されています。見事なまでの情報隠蔽であり、リスクはその見えない情報の陰に潜んでいるのです。1缶わずか100円の節約のために出所不明の金属濃縮スープを飲み干すリスクを冒す価値があるのか、私たちは冷静に考え、お必要があります。次に進みしましょう。誰もが一度は利用したことがある、全国展開の超大手スーパーマーケットチェーンの標準プライベートブランドです。イオンのトップバリュや西友の皆様のお墨付き、あるいは大手ライフの定番ラインなど、100円台半ばで売られている馴染み深い缶詰たちがこれに該当します。これらは一見、大手企業のロゴがついているため、安心安全なイメージを持たれがちですが、実態は契約包装業者による不透明なリレー工場の産物です。このストアブランドモデルが抱える最大の問題は、缶のラベルが変わらない中身の供給元や魚の出所が文字通りコロコロと変わる点にあります。契約するパッカーや漁船団は、その時々で国際市場で最も安く調達できる場所に切り替えられます。つまり、あなたが春に買って美味しいと感じた缶詰と、秋に同じ棚から取った同じラベルの缶詰は、全く異なる海域で取れた、全く別の種類の魚である可能性が非常に高いのです。もちろん、ラベルにはそんな変更は一切記載されません。トレーサビリティが完全に欠如しているため、消費者は自分の健康を運任せのギャンブルに委ねることになります。食品偽装や産地偽装が、これほど問題視される時代において、このように追跡不可能な流通経路を放置していること自体が最大のリスク要因なのです。大手企業の親しみやすい看板は、グローバルな水産物取引の濁流を隠すためのただの目隠しに過ぎません。さて、ここからはさらに巧妙な魚種のすり替えトリックに足を踏み入れます。日本のスーパーだけでなく、カルディや成城石井、輸入食品店、さらには一般的なスーパーの棚にも並んでいる海外から輸入されたお粗落なデザインのイワシ缶についてです。特に注意すべきは、ヨーロッパや東南アジアから輸入され、日本語のシールを上から貼って売られているタイプの格安ネームブランドです。これらは本場ヨーロッパの伝統や地中海の恵みといったロマンチックなイメージを前面に押し出しています。しかし、その中身の多くは生物学的な意味での真のイワシ、マイワシやカタクチイワシなどではなく、より安価で大量に取れる大西洋ウニシン、ヘリングの幼魚やスプラット、ニシン科の酷似した別種です。これが法的に許されているのは、国際基準や日本の食品表示規則の網の目をすり抜ける、イワシという言葉の極めて広い定義のおかげです。消費者は本物のイワシを買っていると信じ込まされ、実際にはニシンの缶詰を高値で買わされているのです。これを目撃した消費者のレビューは辛辣です。身が水っぽくて、箸で持つと泥のように崩れる。独特の生臭さが強すぎて、とてもそのままでは食べられないといった声が溢れています。これはイワシとしての品質が低いだけでなく、そもそもニシン類の安価な代用品を強力な調味料やオイルで強引に缶詰に仕立て上げているからに他なりません。 ニシン自体は素晴らしい栄養を持つ魚ですが、問題は誠実さと価値の不一致です。ブランド側は消費者が裏面の細かい原材料名のフォントをわざわざ虫眼鏡で読まないことを知っています。だから表側には大きくサルディニスイワシと書き、裏面の日本語成分表示には小さく大西洋クリックに真と書くのです。この不都合な真実を隠すマーケティングこそが業界を超え太らせている悪質なトリックです。さらに深刻なのは日本の有名水産食品メーカー、例えばマルハニチロや極洋、日本水産、日水といった誰もが信頼しているナショナルブランドの低価格ラインにも同様の構造が見られる点です。これらの企業はかつて日本の漁業を支えてきた誇り高き歴史を持ち、テレビ CM でも家族の健康を名乗っています。しかし彼らが提供する1缶200円以下の格安オイルイワシ缶の裏面を見てみてください。そこには大豆油という文字が並んでいるはずです。この大豆油による魚のエキシ系とも呼べる業界全体の慣行は、消費者の健康に対する完全な背信行為です。大豆油はオリーブオイルに比べて圧倒的に安価なため、企業の利益率を守るためのクッションとして使われます。それ以上に罪深いのは、この重くニュートラルな安物オイルが魚の質の低さや鮮度の悪さを完全に覆い隠してしまうという事実です。質の良い本物のイワシを良質な水や高級なエクストラバージンオリーブオイルで詰めればごまかしは一切効きません。魚そのものの味で勝負するしかないからです。しかし大豆油の熱い油膜で溺れさせれば魚の生臭さや冷凍焼けした肉質のパサつきをカモフラージュできます。栄養面でも最悪のトレードオフが発生します。イワシの最大の価値は血液をサラサラにし、脳の機能を活性化させオメガ3、脂肪酸 APA、DHA にありますと。コロが大豆アブは炎症を促進する傾向があるオメガ脂肪酸の塊です。オメガ3が豊富な健康的な魚をオメガサカスだらけの超加工シードオイルに浸すことは、イワシを食べる本来の健康目的を自ら破壊することに等しいのです。しかも、魚の良質な油は時間とともに周囲の大豆油に溶け出していきます。あなたはこの体に悪い安物オイルを一緒に飲み干すか、あるいは貴重なオメガ3ごとオイルを排水口に捨てるかという最悪の二者択一を迫られるのです。老舗メーカーへの盲目的な信頼はこの大豆油の海の中で完全に裏切られています。ここで缶詰の外側にあるさらに目に見えない恐怖についてお話ししましょう。それが缶の内部コーティングに使用されている化学物質ビスフェノール ABPA の問題です。多くの安価なイワシ缶は長期間の保存による金属の腐食や酸化を防ぐため、内側にプラスチック樹脂のエポキシライニングを施しています。そしてその原料こそが悪名高き内フェンベコーラン物質、いわゆる環境ホルモンである BPA です。特に油分の多いイワシの缶詰は酸性や水性の食品に比べてこの BPA が食品側に溶け出しやすい性質を持っています。体内のホルモンバランスを乱し、生殖器への影響や発がん性のリスクが指摘されているこの化学物質ですが、日本の現在の法律では、微量の溶出であれば直ちに違法とはなりません。そのため、コストを最優先する格安ブランドや輸入缶詰の多くは、今でも昔ながらの安価な BPA 含有ライニングを使い続けています。恐ろしいことに、パッケージには BPA 使用などとは一切書かれていません。何も書かれていないということは、業界の標準であるリスクのある有害コーティングがそのまま使われていると判断するのが自然です。魚の健康効果をなわいなが、その器からじわじわと化学物質が溶け出している。これ以上の皮肉があるでしょうか。そして私たちが最も警戒しなければならない隠れたリスクがヒスタミンによる食中毒です。これは魚が水揚げされてから缶詰に加工されるまでのコールドチェーン低温流通経路の崩壊によって発生します。イワシなどの青魚にはヒスチジンというアミノ酸が大量に含まれています。魚の温度管理が甘く、少しでも生暖かい環境に放置されると細菌が増殖してこのヒスチジンをヒスタミンという毒素に変換してしまうのです。ヒスタミンが恐ろしいのは一度生成されてしまうとその後の缶詰工場の加熱殺菌処理、 レトルト高圧滅菌をもってしても、絶対に破壊できないという熱安定性にあります。菌は死滅しても、毒素はそのまま缶の中に残り、あなたの食卓へ届けられます。これを食べた消費者は、激しい頭痛、顔面紅潮、蕁麻疹、急激な心拍数の上昇、そして下痢や嘔吐に襲われます。これが、スコンブロイド食中毒です。限界までコストを削った海外の不衛生な加工工場や、漁獲後に氷をケチる粗悪な漁船団は、この目に見えないコールドチェーンを真っ先にカットし、なぜなら24時間完璧な冷蔵冷凍管理を維持するには莫大な電気代と設備投資が必要だからです。見た目や匂いでは判別できないこの恐怖の毒素は、安さを追求した結果として、缶の中に確実に蓄積されていくのです。まだ終わりません。私たちが良かれと思って消費しているイワシが、地球の海を破壊しているという環境破壊の側面、すなわち見えない乱獲の問題があります。世界自然保護基金 WWF やモントレー湾水族館のシーフードウォッチなどの国際的な環境評価機関は、世界中のイワシ漁業を厳格にランク付けしています。彼らの最新データによると、私たちが安価な輸入イワシ缶でよく目にする地中海産や大西洋東部産、一部の北アフリカ沿岸のイワシの多くは、持続不可能なレベルでの過剰漁獲、すなわち赤信号の避けるべき交互減に指定されています。イワシは海の生態系の底辺を支える重要な生物であり、クジラや鳥、大型魚の命の源です。そこを網で根こそぎさらう違法、無報告、無規制回遊遊、漁業が横行しており、その不正に取られた魚が書類を偽造されて日本のディスカウントストアの缶詰へと姿を変えているのです。消費者が安くて健康的だからと買うその位置感が海の砂漠化と生態系の崩壊に加担している。この冷酷なサプライチェーンの真実を格安ブランドは絶対に明かしません。さらに缶詰の塩分、ナトリウムの問題も無視できません。多くの一般的なイワシ缶は保存性を高め、味の悪さをごまかすために大量の精製油が使われています。1缶を食べるだけで厚生労働省が推奨する1日の塩分摂取量の半分近くに達してしまう製品も珍しくありません。高血圧や腎臓の病気を抱える高齢者が健康のためと思って毎日この格安イワシ缶を食べ続ければ、それは健康を促進するどころか病状を悪化させる特効薬になりかねないのです。しかも最も肝心なオメガ3の含有量は、これらの各案缶の成分表には、記載すらされていないことがほとんどです。良い情報は隠し、悪い情報は書かない。これがこの業界のスタンダードなのです。そして最後に、このパートの締めくくりとして、缶詰水産業界の歴史に刻まれた最大の集言をお話ししましょう。これは単なる噂や憶測ではなく、司法の場での有罪判決という、言い逃れのできない国家的な犯罪記録です。世界規模で展開し、日本国内の主要な輸入商社やスーパーにも深く食い込んでいた超大手缶詰ブランド、そのトップたちが引き起こした国際的な価格、カルテル価格操作陰謀事件です。米国司法省の徹底的な調査により、業界の巨頭たちが裏で手を組み、缶詰の価格を不当に高く維持するための秘密会議を長年にわたって重ねていたことが暴露されました。彼らは本来、自由競争によって製品の質を上げ、価格を下げるべき立場にありながら、談合によって消費者を騙し、不当な利益をまだり尽くしていました。この陰謀の首謀者として最適業の最高経営責任者、CEO が起訴され、連邦陪審員によって有罪判決を下され、なんと40ヶ月の連邦刑務所での実刑判決を言い渡されたのです。大企業のトップが庶民のパントリーの定番である缶詰の価格を操作して逮捕され、本物の監獄に送られた。これ以上のブラックユーモアがあるでしょうか。彼らがターゲットにしたのは富裕層ではありません。年金暮らしの高齢者、家計を必死にやりくりしている主婦、安く質の良いプロテインを求めている労働者層、つまり社会の中で最も経済的に脆弱で誠実な食品を必要としている一般庶民の財布から彼らは小銭を巻き上げていたのです。この事件は大手水産缶詰業界がいかに不透明で倫理的に崩壊しており、 消費者をただの搾取対象としか見ていないかを完全に証明しました。私たちがスーパーの棚で目にする高名なブランドのロゴは、法廷で暴かれた犯罪組織の看板と何ら変わりはないのです。いかがですか？あなたが健康的で安いからという理由だけで選んできた、そのイワシ缶の正体が、出所不明の代用魚、過剰な中蓄数、炎症を起こす食用油、溶け出す環境ホルモン、そして犯罪的な価格操作の歴史で満たされているかもしれないのです。しかし、絶望する必要はありません。海にはまだ誠実さと本物の品質を守り続けている本物の漁師と、誇り高きメーカーたちが存在します。私たちはシステムの犠牲者であり続けるのをやめ、賢い選択肢を手に入れる武器を持つべきです。次のパートでは、私たちが徹底的なリサーチとラボデータをもとに選び抜いたこれまでの泥沼のような現実をすべて洗い流してくれる、本当に信頼できる 100% 本物の良いブランドを具体的に紹介していきます。ここからの情報は、あなたがこれまでに費やした時間を完全に保証する本当の救いになるはずです。さて、ここからが最後まで見る価値があった理由です。先ほどまでの泥沼のような暴露増し、化学物質や価格操作の悪夢をすべて洗い流し、私たちの食卓に本当の安心とカナビを取り戻してくれる本物の主役たちを迎え入れましょう。ここから紹介する製品は、企業の利益のために魚種をいさせたり、体に悪いシードオイルで魚を溺れさせたり、環境ホルモンが溶け出す安物の容器を使い回したりするような真似は一切していません。独自の厳しい哲学を持ち、漁獲から加工、容器の選定に至るまで文字通り 100% の誠実さを貫いている日本の市場で今、すぐ手に入るトップブランドたちです。これを一度味わえば、二度とあの100円の金属濃縮スープに戻ることはできなくなります。自分の健康と本物の海の恵みに投資する価値のある真の傑作たちを予算に合わせて順番に見ていきましょう。まず、最も手頃で毎日の食卓に無理なく取り入れられる大衆向けでありながら超一級品のクオリティを維持しているブランドから紹介します。それが静岡県の缶詰専門メーカーとして名高い由比缶詰所や、あるいは高級スーパーから身近な生協、コープ、成城石井ライフのプレミアムラインでも圧倒的な信頼を得ている創建社のイワシ缶シリーズです。特に創建社が提供している国内産マイワシを使った缶詰は、添加物や不要なコストを極限まで排除したまさに誠実さの塊のような製品です。彼らの生産へのアプローチは、広告のキャッチコピーではなく、すべて具体的な数字と事実で証明されています。使用されている魚は、日本の近海で水揚げされた新鮮な天然のマイワシのみ。もちろん、ニシンやスプラットといった代用魚でのごまかしは一切ありません。さらに素晴らしいのは加工に使用されているオイルです。安価な大豆油や菜種油で魚の鮮度をごまかすのではなく、一番搾りの高価な圧搾、一番搾り菜種油、あるいは純粋なオリーブオイルを使用しています。感覚的な描写をするなら、缶を開けた瞬間に広がるのは、あの角和缶特有のドブのような生臭さではなく、澄んだ魚の脂の香ばしさと上質なオイルの爽やかなアロマです。箸で身を持ち上げても泥のように崩れることはなく、魚の美しい繊維がしっかりと保たれています。口に入れるとしっとりとした上品な肉質が溶け、魚本来の凝縮された旨味が広がります。価格分析をしてみましょう。このクオリティでありながら、1缶あたりの実売価格は300円から400円程度です。あの100円のゴミ缶と比べれば3倍近く高く感じるかもしれませんが、1食あたりの健康投資として換算すれば、その差額はわずか200円ほど。ペットボトルの飲み物を1本我慢するだけで炎症を引き起こすオメガシンの海を回避し、最高濃度の天然 EPA と DHA を安全に摂取できるのです。専門家のテスト結果でも、中脂マスの蓄積リスクが極めて低いクリーンな海域の魚であることが裏付けられており、健康を最優先したいすべての人にとって、これ以上ない日常使いのベストチョイスと言えます。次にご紹介するのは、日本の水産缶詰界において、プレミアム天然サステナブルの地位を確立しているブランド、千葉産直サービスが手掛ける ミニトロイワシシリーズです。このブランドは、ただの食品メーカーの枠を超え、日本の伝統的な漁業の保護と海の生態系を守るサステナブルな長漁業のパイオニアとして知られています。彼らがリストに入る資格があるのは、その凶器ともいえる原料へのこだわりです。千葉県銚子港で水揚げされるマイワシの中でも、最も脂が乗った1年のうちのわずか数週間の限られた時期、いわゆる入梅イワシの時期に採れた超一級品のみを厳選して使用しています。しかも、漁獲されてから完全に凍結されるまでの時間を極限まで短縮し、完璧な冷凍・冷蔵ハンドリングを維持することで、先ほど警告したヒスタミンの発生リスクを根本からゼロにしています。さらに、缶の内側には BPA、ビスフェノール A を一切使用していない、最先端の環境ホルモン、フリー・安心ライニングを採用していることを公式に明言しています。これを実際に口にした時の衝撃は忘れません。まさにトロという名の通り、口の中で身が濃厚にとろけていきます。骨まで完全に柔らかく煮込まれているのに、皮の銀色の輝きが美しく残っており、手作業で1缶ずつ丁寧に詰められた職人技が視覚からも伝わってきます。味付けに使われているのは、伝統的な無添加の醤油や有機栽培の厳選された調味料のみ、化学調味料のピリピリとした刺激は一切ありません。価格は1缶400円を超えますが、失われた海の栄養素を完璧な形で体内に取り込めるという事実は、この価格差を完全に正当化します。まさに大人のための、そして子供に安心して与えられる本物のイワシ缶です。そして最後に、缶詰と概念を完全に覆す究極のプレミアム体験を提供してくれる最高峰の選択肢をご紹介します。それが京都丹後地方で100年以上の歴史を誇る老舗竹中缶詰の天橋立オイルサーディンです。この製品はカルディや成城石井、百貨店の地下食料品売り場で見かけるまさに日本の水産加工品の芸術品です。彼らの哲学は手仕事による完璧な調和です。使用されるのは日本海側のクリーンな海域で採れた新鮮なカタクチイワシ。驚くべきは工場に運ばれた魚を熟練の職人たちが一匹ずつ手作業で頭と内臓を切り落とし、サイズをきれいに揃えて缶の中に狂いなく美しく並べていくプロセスです。この丁寧な処理があるからこそ、格安缶のレビューにありがちなザラザラした鱗や硬い骨が口に残るといった不快感が1ミリも存在しません。詰められるオイルは魚の味を一切邪魔しない、極めて高品質な綿実油やピュアオリーブオイル。缶を開けた瞬間、まるでパズルのように美しく整列したイワシたちと対面することになります。その食感は繊細でどこまでも北かく、噛むほどにカタクチイワシ特有の上品なコクが広がります。唯一の欠点があるとすればその価格です。1缶あた700円から800円前後という、これまでの各缶が7缶買えてしまうほどのラグジュアリーな価格設定です。しかし、これは単なる手軽なおかずではありません。家で高級ビストロのクオリティを再現するための、あるいは大切な人へ健康と本物の味を送るためのギフトとしての価値を持っています。特別な日の晩酌に、ワインとともにこの完璧な悲嘆感を開ける贅沢。それにかかる費用が1000円以下だと思えば、むしろ破格の安さであると言えるでしょう。いかがでしょうか。今回ご紹介した創建者千葉さん直サービス、そして竹中缶詰庫。柄はどれも広告の甘い言葉に頼ることなく、その製品の品質、ラボのデータ、そして職人のプライドによって偽りの多い水産缶業界の中で奇跡的に輝き続けている本物のブランドたちです。安さの罠に落ちるのをやめ、こうした誠実な企業を応援することこそが私たちの健康を守り、日本の美しい海と食文化を未来へとつなぐ唯一の方法なのです。ここまでの調査で、私たちは安さという麻薬がいかに私たちの視界を曇らせ、業界の不都合な真実から目をせけさせてきたかを目撃してきました。しかし、これからはあなた自身が賢い鑑定士として、スーパーの棚の前で正しい決断を下せるようになる番です。ここでスクリーンショットの準備をしてください。二度とマーケティングの罠になさまらないための現場で使える5つの鉄則をお伝えします。ルール1、全面のイワシではなく、 裏面の魚種名を凝視せよ。法律の抜け穴をついた表の宣伝文句に騙されてはいけません。必ず缶を引く。目返し、原材料名を確認してください。そこに、マイワシ、カタクチイワシ、ウルメイワシといった具体的な和名が書かれていれば合格です。もし大西洋にシンやスプラットと書かれていれば、それはイワシの皮をかぶった別の安価な代用魚です。リール2、大豆油の記載がある缶は、その場で棚に戻せ。油漬けを選ぶなら、エキストラバージンオリーブオイル、100歩譲っても綿実油か米油、菜種油です。大豆油は最悪のコスト削減シードオイルであり、魚の鮮度の悪さを隠すための目隠しです。迷ったらごまかしの一切効かない、水煮を選ぶのが最も安全な防衛策になります。リール3、原産国と水揚げ港、そして漁獲海域の透明性を求めよ。良質なブランドは、日本の近海や千葉県銚子港など、誇りを持って具体的な産地を明記しています。ただ、輸入とだけ書かれ、どこの海で取れたかもわからない格安の海外産缶詰は、中チショスの濃縮や乱獲の赤信号エリアから運ばれてきたリスクが跳ね上がります。リール4、BPA フリーの表記、またはメーカーの公式宣言を確認せよ。中身がどれほど健康的な魚でも、容器の内側から環境ホルモンが溶け出していては本末転倒です。パッケージや企業のホームページで、缶の内面コーティングにビスフェノール A を使用していないことを明言している誠実なメーカーを選び抜いてください。リール5、1缶150円以下の安すぎる価格を徹底的に疑え、日本の優れた漁師たちが命がけで魚を取り、完璧な冷蔵管理で運び、工場で丁寧に加工して缶に詰める。この工程を真面目にこなして、100円台前半で利益が出るわけがありません。その異常な安さは、目に見えないコールドチェーンの崩壊や安全テストの省略という形で、あなたの健康から前借りしたコストなのです。動画全体を振り返ってみましょう。イワシ缶は本来、オメガ3、カルシウム、ビタミン D が詰まった現代の奇跡のような最強の健康食品です。それなのに現代の水産業界は、利益を最大化するためにそのシンプルなひた缶を偽物と化学物質で汚染するシステムを作り上げてしまいました。私たちがスーパーの棚でただ最安値を追い求めるのをやめ、一缶あたり数十円、数百円の正しい多様化を支払う姿勢を持つこと。それこそが私たちがマーケティングの搾取対象から脱却し、真に豊かな食卓を取り戻すための最初にして最大の思考の転換なのです。今日も最後まで付き合ってくれてありがとうございます。もし今回の暴露で明日からの買い物かごの中身が変わる気がしたなら、ぜひこの動画を家族の件、安を預かる大切な人やパントリーに缶詰を常備しているあの人にシェアしてあげてください。きっと感謝されるはずです。さあ、コメント欄で教えてください。今回紹介した問題ありの観光を持つ格安缶、あるいは創建者や千葉産着サービスのような本物のブランド、今あなたの家の棚にあるのはどちらですか？次回は私たちが毎朝何気なく使っているあの調味料に隠されたさらにディープな利権と偽装の闇に切り込みます。通知をオンにして待っていてください。次にあなたがスーパーの棚でイワシ缶を手に取るとき、そのラベルの裏側にある本当の海の姿をどうか忘れないでください。それではまた次の調査報告でお会いしましょう。